Under the same moon, we share the love. Embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world share in love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. We have so much in store today, and shout out to Pretty Tings for being the first one in the building. And thank you so much for being here pretty much every show. It's so amazing. I just want to say thank you so much. Today, we're going to prepare for what could happen tonight at 8 p.m. We know the President of the United States has given Iran a deadline, or else all hell will break loose. What does that mean? Well, that's the question everybody wants to know. That's what the preacher man wants to know, right? Well, tonight I have blocked out a series of time to be on guard and report to you live what's happening in regards to this war if it does kick off. We know that the president has given Iran some ultimatums, and if we, sitting here in the United States of America, do not come to the realization that we are affected by every little detail, then we're mistakenly wrong. We're deceiving ourselves with false reasoning to only think that we won't be affected if the war intensifies at a higher level. Now, to show you guys how extreme these things have become, I'm going to show you some of the individuals that are strong supporters of the President of the United States. And I want you to notice how now they sing a new song. They have changed their tune. In fact, when you go back to when the election was happening, so many people were promoting the president over themselves, right? There's nothing wrong with that if that's what really floats your boat. But now to see these individuals take a different stance in regards to the president is quite mind-boggling. Let's take a look at the first individual. He goes by the name of Alex Jones. Let's check him out and see what he has to say.
And he does look sick. And he does babble and, sound like the brain's not doing too hot. And so we just cut bait on Trump, and we just mobilize against the Democrats. And we mobilize against neocons, we primary them, and we just fight even harder because look at how we've turned the tide. Look at all the good we've done. There's a fourth turning. Populists, nationalists, conservatives are winning everywhere. There's a Christian reawakening. And Trump is just a minor figure in all of that now. And we have to be appreciative of the old Trump that went through so much and got so much done. And that's the Trump we remember.
So basically, he's writing off the president as the man he used to be. My grandfather would always say, I'm the same old rooster. I just can't crow like I used to, right? So that's what often people do when they're not happy about their current situation. They tell you, well, when I was 20 years old, I could run a mile, but I can't do it anymore. So basically, Alex Jones is now saying, well, President Trump was a great guy back then, just over a year and a half ago. But now he's turned into something that we cannot identify. Who is this masked man, as they would say, right? They're starting to turn on the president. In fact, they don't even want to claim him. Check this out.
And we're just sad because that happens. We need to be sad about Trump. This is not funny. This is not good. But he's gone.
You notice he's even highlighting the president's ankles, right? This is going down to the lowest of the pits, right?
And that's it. And all the people rallied around him. You can see Hegseth's freaked out. You can see the press secretary's freaked out. They're being loyal. They think it's the lesser of two evils. And okay, but I just, Trump needs intervention. He needs to take some time off. We need to pray for Trump, that the Holy Spirit touch his heart and loose him from whatever evil control he's under. I'm serious. And I think that's the answer. We need to pray for President Trump. We need to pray for other people to be awakened. We need to pray for justice.
Would you imagine that we would be facing such times when you would see Alex Jones take this position about the President of the United States? Well, let me show you what's going to be developing in regards to this war and this deadline that we're fast approaching tonight. Let's check this out. You're going to be shocked.
So I started making some phone calls. I was so concerned about what to do with this war and what Trump's really thinking. And I talked to a whole bunch of people, Pentagon, intelligence.
Now, this guy's not a Democrat or somebody that really goes against Donald Trump at every turn. This is a strong Trump supporter. Notice what he has to say about what's happening in regards to the war.
White House, Trump confidants, Pentagon journalists, and they know who they are. But it's the same way I told you they had a meeting 6 days after Kirk was killed, and Kash Patel said shut down any foreign involvement investigations or any accomplices domestically. Of course, it came out exactly as I said, the exact meeting, the exact date. Now, why do I get this? Because they don't have a huge show, and they're scared to put it out themselves. I've had top journalists, as big as I am or bigger. Who could that be? Gee, I don't know. Give me a lot of this intel as well, because at the time, they were still trying to preserve their relationship with the president. These people are very close to J.D. Vance. I'll leave it at that. And I mean, very close to J.D. Vance. And obviously, this is known. My phones are all tapped, so it's not a secret. And it's not like they're leaking anything classified or anything. But Vance has been vehemently anti-war. Once Trump goes, he backs him. He signed up for that. I'm not even attacking him for that. That's what he signed up for. Be loyal and follow what the president says. Even Susie Wiles, who gets demonized a lot, and I have big problems with her in a lobbying firm. She's been pissed off. And I told you that weeks ago. It was in the news last week. So when I tell you this, two of the people are close confidants of Trump. Another is let's just say, very close in the cabinet. And they're wanting me to know this. Just like when Charlie Kirk called me a couple times, called me many times before that, but a couple times right before he got killed, saying, keep up the Epstein pressure. He's not in there. But
Alex Jones is painting the picture that the President of the United States is off his rocker. Can you imagine that this is the state of affairs that we're living in? And again, he's not a Democrat. He's actually a Republican supporter of Trump, MAGA. And now he's saying we need to turn the curve on the President of the United States. And you can only imagine what this means as we approach 8 o'clock tonight, when Iran is not backing down. They're not trying to make a deal. They want to carry it out because they see this as a mission associated with their God. And once a man is committed to an act because of God, it's very hard to get him to change the position, because his life is often in the hands of God. So he imagined he's going to be saved. Even in death, these people feel like they're going to go to a place such as heaven, or they're going to experience nirvana, all of these glorious things. Whereas the average person, like the average American, is just terrified because nobody really wants war.
They've convinced him at the CIA not to release it. I told you about this. Right after he died. Keep it up. We're putting pressure. You saw that come out of other places in his text messages. He also said, keep up the pressure on Iran. This will derail everything. This will derail the recovery. It'll be a quagmire. He's got a lot of bad forces putting pressure on him. And you saw, then the Israel lobby denied that Kirk ever said that, and they released the text messages and found clips of him on TV saying it. So the point is, there's a lot of lobbying of the president going on. And they don't want smart people like Charlie Kirk or Tulsi Gabbard or Joe Kent or me advising the president. And that was big news in the first admin. New chief of staff's main job is keeping Alex Jones away from Trump. Remember all those headlines? I'd say, sir, this person's George Soros, this person's globalist, this person's, he'd fire him. Just like you see a reporter, when they open up the reporters, they kind of cut that back now. They come up and say, Mr. President, did you know this? He'd check it and fire him 2 hours later. He said, really? Really? on a whole bunch of issues. I mean, he is the president. He is making the decisions, but these bad people are able to convince him, so they spend all their time bubble wrapping him. Goodness.
Okay, so all of the bad people are influencing the president. He's really a good guy. This is what his supporters are saying, such as Alex Jones. He's a good guy, but he's surrounded by these people, these bad guys, and so they bubble wrapped him, and they're the reason why we're heading into this war, and our lives could be changing at a high level for a very long time. Hopefully a deal can be made, but tonight we're going to be covering this because 8 o'clock tonight, Eastern Standard Time, is the deadline in regards to Iran to make a deal, and we're going to see how this develops. But notice what Alex is saying, a supporter of the president.
He's looking for an off-ramp internally. He knows that he was lied to. He knows it's hurting the economy. He's really upset about the Strait, even though he's saying he isn't. Oh, go ahead and keep the Strait. We don't care. Now, next day, effing turn it over. We're going to blow you up. Put you in the Stone Age. He's really upset with the people that advised him. And I said, what was that Levin thing about? He goes, oh, absolutely. He is really, really now just think Levin's an idiot. And then I saw Levin Saturday night. Okay, we need to go ahead and end it, but have a permanent U.S. base and just kill them here and there when we need to. Well, that's better than World War IV. And Mark Levin makes jokes about World War IV. It's what the CIA calls it, Dumbo. World War III was the cold.
So I just wanted to give you guys a good indication of what's happening right now when it comes to different individuals who are strong president supporters, but now we're starting to see them come up with all of these reasonings as to why things are going the way they are. I'm going to show you now even how the Pope has come forward to speak in regards to these matters. And it's quite frankly, it's not great what he has to say in regards to the President of the United States, as he has come out to be a critic, right?
Since becoming the first US-born leader of the Catholic Church, Pope Leo has largely avoided comment on his home country. He'd never mentioned President Donald Trump publicly until now.
President Trump.
But that era has come to an end, according to Reuters Vatican correspondent Joshua McElwee.
Some Vatican officials have been telling me for the past 10 months that Pope Leo is quite cautious about how he talks about the United States. What seemed to change this week is that Pope Leo has become more and more vocal in criticism of the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran that began the Iran war that is now in its second month. The Pope on Palm Sunday, which is the celebration that opens Holy Week for Catholics.
Okay, guys, JC Toad says, you're fed up when you piss off the Pope. All right, thank you.
The most important week of the year, gave a homily in which he said that God rejects the prayers of those who wage war because they have blood on their hands.
Susan says, Alex is a scammer poster child. Now, notice what it just said in regards to the Pope. The Pope says that God rejects the prayers of those that engage in war. What is he saying in regards to this administration and the fact that we're engaging in war with Iran? Keep note of how this develops.
This is a very strong thing for the Pope to say.
Those comments were interpreted by conservative Catholic commentators as aimed at US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
May his almighty and eternal arms,
who's previously invoked Christian language to justify the joint US-Israeli military action. The Pope's sharp criticism of the Iran war and his direct naming of Trump on Tuesday marks a significant shift in tone from the pontiff.
Hopefully he's looking for an off-ramp. Hopefully he's looking for a way to decrease the amount of violence, of bombing.
The Pontiff Leo chose to use an American colloquialism the president and administration officials would understand.
I think broadly speaking, Vatican officials, like much of the world, are aware that President Trump is taking a lot of moves that are controversial and divisive, and they're quite worried about the direction of the world. They're worried about the atmosphere of violence in the Iran war, but also
the other night we had this extensive breakdown about Christian nationalism, and we know that as a person seeking to be a Christian, in essence following in the footsteps of Jesus, right? They're supposed to lead with the love. War is definitely not a part of the story, especially in a glamorous way or engaging in war. In fact, the Bible says you'll learn war anymore. This is for people that are believers. But you have the Catholic Church, right, coming out to say, listen, you guys who are professing to be Christians, your prayers are going to be hindered if you engage in these wars. And also, this whole event started off with the taking of the lives of roughly 100 to 60, 180 young schoolgirls. So all of these things are at play, and we're starting to see it unfold, and we're seeing so many people push back on it, and they're being quite vocal.
So in Trump's decision to remove President Maduro in Venezuela, or Trump's threats against Cuba and possibly looking for regime change in Cuba. And I think generally there's a great concern for where will the world be in the next few years, and what should the Vatican's voice, what should the Pope's voice be calling for?
Leo on Thursday began 4 days of Vatican events leading up to Easter Sunday, when he will deliver a special blessing and message from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. It's one of the most closely watched appointments on the Pope's calendar, and one where pontiffs often make a major international appeal.
And I think what we're seeing from Pope Leo is perhaps a recognition that, not beyond speaking in general terms.
Okay, guys, Pretty Tings says, this is an outcry from so many people. It all boils my blood. How can so many people vote for this? Okay, thank you.
With regard to the world situation, he's more willing, or seeing it as more important now, to kind of name names and also to mention President Trump by name.
Okay, so that's coming from the Pope. You guys heard it first. You see what's happening in regards to this. But now we're going to take a look at what's happening in regards to this war in Iran and how tonight it could really escalate. But we're going to look at some of the developments of it.
We are now going to bring in California Congressman Darrell Issa. Congressman, President Trump is telling us that his patience is running thin. His latest post on Truth Social has some really bad words in it, so we're just going to give you the gist of it. He said, Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the F word straight, you crazy B words, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. Congressman, do you want to see the U.S. start hitting, like the president says, civilian infrastructure in Iran?
Well, the answer is, of course, the president didn't want to do it. He'd like to turn over to the Iranian people a country that can recover quickly with a change in the regime's behavior or a change of regime. But from the beginning, the president's made it clear that
So that threat that the president of the United States made, the one that everybody's been talking about, the deadline that I'm speaking about, 8 p.m. tonight, that's when all of this hell could ring forth.
First hit was to stop the nuclear development when it was on the precipice of being used. The second one is to change the behavior of the administration or change administration. And the president in his negotiations been clear, he'll take either one. If this regime is willing to change its ways through a negotiation.
So basically what Alex was just saying as we started off the show is that this whole war, the conflict, whichever way you want to frame it, it was sold to the president as being a very temporary, quick, we're going to drop these explosives on them. They're going to be screaming to change their regime. We'll be in and out. We'll come out looking very strong. But in actuality, what Alex Jones is saying is that the administration, some of these individuals misled the president along with the prime minister of Israel. And so now he's basically stuck between a rock and a hard place because the Iranians do not want to back down. And so for this deadline tonight, it's going to really show us if they want to make a deal or not. And it's quite likely they won't.
That leads to a verifiable peace, okay. But at the end of the day, he'll do what he has to do. And that includes taking the oil away from them, taking away their ability to move equipment. And Peter, let's be honest. When you take away bridges, you take away the ability for them to transport future weapons development, to run factories. So they're not purely civilian targets, but they are less valuable than the ones we hit initially from a standpoint of current weapons fighting. But in the long run,
sometimes it's not a matter of what people say. We have to watch their actions. And so, as I've expressed to you guys many times before, I've sat in court now 2 times with Nicolas Maduro, the former president of Venezuela, right? He's on trial in New York. He's actually housed in the jail MDC in Brooklyn, along with his wife. But he explained how the military came in and basically extracted him from his country. And he kept saying in court, I've been kidnapped, I've been kidnapped, I've been kidnapped. Okay. So when you look at the big picture, the president tried to make a deal with him. He didn't make a deal, and the United States gets the oil, right? And our president has told us time and time again, listen, we have taken their oil. Okay, so now we've started this other action in Iran. And guess what you guys are starting to hear now? We're starting to hear we're going to take their oil. We're going to blow them to smithereens, and we're going to take their oil. So when you really back away and you look at it from the helicopter view, you start to see that the United States at a high level is trying to grab resources from other countries to probably take care of the debt that we have. And also, do not forget about what happened in Greenland, one of our allies. We want to take over that area for resources too. So, at the end of the day, a lot of this is about conquering and resources, although many people will not say it on air.
The president's going to eliminate their ability to operate as a regime if they're not willing to capitulate. And he's made that very, very clear.
And Congressman, if the U.S., as we just saw, can land planes inside Iran to...
Shout out to you, Gold Digger. Always nice to have you. You're such a powerful asset here at Watching the World.
Then send in SEALs on the ground in Iran to go rescue a missing airman. Should they also go land planes inside Iran and send SEAls on the ground to go get Iran's uranium?
Well, I think if they knew they could get it with the same precision, of course they would. But, you know, extracting uranium isn't something you do by a quick grab and throw it in the back of the trunk. And so it would be a much longer period of time, greater exposure. And this president's made it clear that if he has to choose between Iranian lives and American lives are going to be saved. And so it's very, very clear that the president is using other techniques rather than risking Americans whenever possible. And this is such a change from the earlier Republicans and Democrats, the way they did business. He's not putting our...
So when you really think about it, it's quite the crisis of conscience, because America, even though we have a lot of diversity, it's primarily a Christian nation. If you don't believe me, when you go to court, they often have you swear on the Bible. A lot of the different laws are built into this whole arena when it comes to Christianity. We could break it down if you really want to. But when it comes to Iran, they have a different God that they're praying to. You'll hear them talk about, in fact, the president said peace to Allah or what have you when he was talking about them the other day. So each nation have their gods and they have their hope. But war, you have to ask the question, is it a matter of which God is more powerful as to who wins these wars? And why are we fighting over resources? Well, it's very important because this uranium that Iran has can be quite detrimental. And you can also see their philosophy. So we can't just write this off and say, oh, you know, a lot of people who don't even understand how this is working, they just speak badly. Oh, we're just going in. We want to do war. And they don't even have a clue of the threat that Iran has when it comes to the uranium. And even though at the last quarter of last year, the president actually expressed that they went in with Midnight Hammer and they really inhibited Iran's ability to create this nuclear bomb. Well, and I probably shouldn't be saying that word here on YouTube, but anyway, we'll say B from now on, right? Even though he said it was inhibited, they have come to find out that this enriched uranium is actually deep into the earth. So it's still a huge threat to their neighbors, but also to the United States. So it requires a balance in looking at this. I don't want to be the one to sit here and tell you war is bad, war is bad. Iran has taken such a strong stance. And just imagine if they had the enriched uranium and they had a nuclear weapon already. Just imagine for the neighboring countries what could happen. But it leads us to another question. If in Europe, their neighbor because actually their missiles reach some 4,000 miles, so it could hit Italy and some of these European places. Why aren't they going in to try to persuade the Iranians to get rid of these weapons of mass destruction and all of that? Why is it the United States that has to come from so far and put up this fight? And why is it that Israel is the one that's the prod that's really pushing for this war? These are the questions we really need to ask ourselves as we move forward, because at the end of the day, these big issues will definitely fall into your lap. It will fall into our laps.
Boots in harm's way unless absolutely necessary, and then only if he can minimize the risk, as he did in this incredible recovery of our airmen.
And,
Okay, we have JB says, trust our presidential Donald J. Trump's judgment. He is really, really trying to usher in a safe relationship with our nation. Thank you.
You're talking about how maybe they would go get the uranium if they knew they could do it with such precision. The Pentagon only did this rescue mission because they had to. They say that Iran was getting closer to this kernel by the hour. But now that they have done it and nobody got hurt or killed, could this be like a dry run for boots on the ground?
Well, Peter, again, the general made it clear.
Deborah says, back in the day, I was taught that if you want to remain friends with people, don't speak religion and politics. Thank you, Deborah.
That you had a trained individual who was moving to the safest possible location and communicating. Look, this uranium is exactly where it was put by the Iranians. This uranium is absolutely where they know. It could be booby trapped. There's an awful lot of things. I'm a former EOD soldier. There's one thing you know for sure is that you don't know for sure what the booby traps are. And so to send our troops in and find out that they can push a button and blow up the site with us in it is not something we want to find out the hard way. And so the president is doing what he needs to do to get it the right way, which is to get the regime to turn over this and other tools and to change their way. Nobody said this was going to be easy. You know, we go all the way back to Jimmy Carter almost half a century ago, and every negotiation has failed. Every technique to get them to change has failed. And the president now is using the only technique that he knows will in time succeed, which is you will either change or we will be negotiating with your successor. He's already been through a couple of successors, and there's no question at all. They can at will eliminate who they're negotiating with and go on to the next negotiator until one of them realizes that going to meet Allah is something they'd like to delay.
And Congressman, last thing before I let you go, the U.S. says that they have blown the Iranian military back to the Stone Ages. Now, adding insult to injury, the president had ICE go and round up some of the family members of the general that he killed in Trump 1.0, Soleimani, who were living in the U.S. The State Department tells us they terminated their lawful permanent resident status, and this is a quote, Afshar Soleimani pushed propaganda for Iran's terrorist regime while enjoying a lavish lifestyle in Los Angeles, as attested to by her frequent posting on her recently deleted Instagram account. Congressman, what took ICE so long here?
What took us so long is very straightforward, Peter, and you witnessed it in the previous 4 years. Over 10 million, perhaps as many as 15 million people allowed in. To find the proverbial needle in the haystack, well, Peter, there are thousands.
All right, guys. Grumpy says this is simply about oil. Definitely, I can understand that.
Of needles, tens of thousands of needles, people who are dangerous, people who didn't come here for the right reason, people who, in fact, have been planted here. And that doesn't even include this technique that the Chinese have been using to plant 100,000 plus future Chinese spies.
Definitely, we cannot be confused about China's effect on Iran and also Russia too. All of this fits into the equation. But now we're going to understand how the president could have been misguided when it comes to this whole action and this war. Let's get to that.
22 past with the breaking news right now that U.S. airman rescued in Iran is reportedly in Kuwait and being treated for his injuries. President Trump said the brave airman is seriously wounded but will be just fine after that risky nighttime operation. Joining me now is Virginia Congressman Suhas Subramaniam, member of the Ethics Committee and ranking member of the Oversight Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs. Congressman, welcome. First question to you, sir. Were you or other members of Congress briefed at any point during or after the rescue? And the president now saying that the U.S. is deep in negotiations with Iran and a deal could happen by Tuesday. What does Congress know, and do you believe it?
We haven't been briefed at all. We've been on recess. We've been wanting to come back from our recess to be able to end the shutdown for Department of Homeland Security.
Now, just as a side note, when I covered the Clintons' deposition, I was able to meet this gentleman here, right? And basically, from what he was expressing to the crowd as we stood there before the Clintons and also the representatives from the committee, one of the points of interest is that once the midterm elections come through and the Democrats win predominantly, the first order of business is going to be to try to impeach the president of the United States. So that gives you an idea of where we're headed. So on one track, we're headed to this war. And tonight at 8 p.m., things could really get out of hand. And then as a foresight, we see that the midterm elections are coming. We know that the president is really concerned about those, but it's going to be hard to navigate all of this because they're not on the same track. And one of the tracks, the one that involves the midterm elections, if it does not go in the favor of the Republicans, the Democrats are really going to have the president sitting in a very hot seat.
But in the end, we have not been kept apprised of any negotiations. What I will say is he's said many times that this war would end and that the end would be right around the corner. Yet that has not happened at any point. So it's hard to really take seriously what this president actually says.
But what about, sir, this morning? In that expletive-laden post, the president doubled down on his threat to launch a major attack on Tuesday if Iran does not.
Guys, we have 500 people. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, support the channel. Thank you very much for all the support.
Not make a deal or reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So, Congressman, what's your reaction not only to his threats and language deeply unbecoming of a president of the United States, but this Tuesday timeline he's laying out?
Well, he set timelines before and then backed away from them. I will say this president from the very beginning has completely misunderstood this Iranian regime and Iranian culture generally. And that is very important. You're supposed to know your enemy before you get into a war. And he has not shown any sort of understanding of them. Making these threats doesn't really deter them in any sort of way. In fact, it emboldens them to continue to.
So I just want to give you guys a perspective here. When you think about China, they have all of these plans that reach out to some 100 years down the line. But here in the United States, because of our Republican and Democratic stances, we play tug of war. So now the Republicans are in, they have the strength. And now if Donald Trump loses his grasp with the midterm elections after starting a war, now the Democrats have to feel like they have to go and clean up what the Republicans have done. And then once the Democrats get in and they come up with all of their different strategies and they allow people who might identify a certain way to even start surgeries, and they get funding for their surgeries, they start the process, takes 4 or 5 years. But guess what? Then a Republican president comes in, and now all of a sudden, nope, we're not paying for your surgery anymore. You just stay like that the rest of your life. We get all of this going back and forth. Sometimes people get a little bit narrow-sighted in what I'm saying. You really have to stick with me because I don't want you to walk away and saying that did you say you were okay with people having changes? No. What I'm saying is that these things are happening. It's a tug of war going back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats. And at the end of the day, we're not really getting a whole lot accomplished because we don't work together. For the last 10 years, it's been primarily about Donald Trump and getting him out of office. He's getting in office. It's just been one big fiasco while other countries are looking to take advantage of the United States of America, no doubt.
Block the Strait of Hormuz. And even if he went through and he bombed all of the critical infrastructure in Iran, the Iranian regime does not care about its people. They just care about staying in power. And they would actually get some sympathy through this by him making life so much worse for the Iranian people and bombing infrastructure. So it just shows a real lack of understanding of how to approach this war from the very beginning.
Let's look stateside, because Thursday, Trump fired Attorney General Pam Bondi, in fact, a couple weeks before her scheduled deposition on the Epstein files. And your colleagues, you all still want her to appear. Let's take a listen to Ro Khanna.
I mean, if we could chase Hillary Clinton, who hasn't been in office for 20 years, certainly we can get Pam Bondi to explain why she covered up documents, why we haven't had prosecutions.
What do you make of what Ro Khanna said there? Is he right? So do you expect her to show? And what would you want to ask her?
Yeah, he's exactly right. When he says chase, he means they actually tried to hold Hillary Clinton in criminal.
We're actually going to break down Pam Bondi at the end of the show. I'm going to show you everything as the reason why she received the boot. Okay, but we're going to keep moving for now. We have so much to cover today. And we're going to understand the U.S. strategy when it comes to Iran.
The president lashed out at NATO allies today for rejecting his call for help against Iran. Fareed Zakaria is with me now.
And guys, please don't get too bundled up in your pants, because we're going to go back. You're going to see some Fox News. You're going to see some CNN. You might see a little bit of this and that. It all tells us a big story as we look at things from different perspectives. All right. It's America first, not about blues and reds. It's about unity.
He's the host of CNN, Fareed Zakaria, GPS, and he's written an op-ed in the Washington Post with the headline, quote, "Iran is an imperial trap. America walked right in." What do you mean by an imperial trap?
Well, you know, when you're a superpower and you can do stuff all over the world, you have to be relentlessly focused on, does this rise to the level of something that affects the...
Guys, take a moment, hit the like button, share, subscribe, but also hit the heart buttons to get us in the algorithm. Thank you.
Core interests, values, and prosperity of the American people. And this one just doesn't feel like that. Iran was a manageable problem. It was being contained. And it reminded me of those many times that Britain, when it was the global superpower, would get dragged into places like Iraq.
So you see what he's saying? He's comparing America to Britain, and how when they were a superpower, they were getting dragged into all of these different wars. But notice what happens.
It's like Afghanistan. And it's kind of squander away its superpower status while America and Germany were building their industrial might. And if you look at what the United States has been doing for the last 5 years, 3 wars in the greater Middle East, while China is building up its industrial might, the historical parallel.
China is building up its strength, sitting back. And also, while we're tackling all of these issues, such as Iran, you have China on the low, as they say nowadays in the modern vernacular. On the low, they're feeding Iran different intelligence and also supplies. You also have Russia doing the same thing. What does this mean? These are the questions we really need to focus on and try to understand to have preservation for the future.
Parallel is kind of eerie.
Why do you think the president is calling this an excursion? I mean, they insisted on calling the Department of Defense the Department of War. Secretary of Defense wants to call himself the Secretary.
I think he means incursion, but I think he's probably got confused with excursion. But let's
war,
see.
And yet they're afraid to use the word war.
That is truly bizarre, right? Like, they renamed it the Department of War because they want to emphasize we don't, use euphemisms. Right. We call things what they are. It's a war, except now
they changed it to the Department of War. But recently, remember, we watched the press conference with the president and Hegseth. Now they want to call it the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense.
They're saying it's not a war, even though it plainly is. The excursion thing I've heard is fascinating. Apparently, Trump was briefed on a number of times on the Iran war, and it was called an incursion. He started...
See what I said? I was right. So it was an incursion. Okay, very good.
Incursion into Iran.
An incursion into, right. He started to call it an excursion, which is a brief trip organized for leisure activities. And maybe this tells you something about the way the White House works. No one has the courage to just gently and politely
Is that really true?
correct the president. Well, you tell me. You've watched the White House. In those cabinet meetings, Anderson, do you think any of them are saying, Mr. President, you misspoke?
Actually, the word is incursion, not excursion. Yes, I mean, if they won't correct their shoe size with the shoes he's given out. Marco Rubio is running around in oversized shoes, which is surreal. The NATO alliance, what does this, I mean, I've been asking everybody tonight, but I think it's a very real issue. What does this, whatever happens in Iran, this, to the president, proves his point that NATO is not there for the United States?
It's a largely bogus charge that the president is making. Remember, NATO did not participate as NATO in the Iraq War. NATO did not participate as NATO in the Vietnam War.
I want you guys to let Stephen live, because what does it say for him to come and listen to a dumb guy? What would that say about him? So let him be, please.
There are many times when NATO has not participated in American wars. And in this case, he never asked NATO. He never consulted them beforehand. He never tried to build a coalition to do it. So it's hardly surprising. And by the way, let's not forget, it's only about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, that he threatened to invade a NATO country. So, the whole idea that NATO should be falling over itself to join in here.
Do you think it's a mistake, though, by some of these European countries not to, in some way, render some kind of assistance to the U.S. in this?
Well, look, if they are trying to manage their relations with the U.S., maybe it would make sense, and that's why the British and the French have been more willing. But I think that, the way alliances are meant to work is you consult them, you talk to them. Whereas Trump has, constantly badmouthed them, constantly denigrated them. So it's hardly the moment to suddenly say, oh, I feel like I'm in trouble now, I need your help. We know, when that happens, when you do that, you don't get a great response.
We've got about 40 seconds left. Brett McGurk was saying he sees this potentially going on for another 3 to 4 weeks, particularly if you want to build some sort of coalition to deal with the Strait of Hormuz.
We're all trying to psychoanalyze.
We're probably going to be hearing 3 to 4 weeks for a mighty long time. Remember, that's how it started with Russia and Ukraine, right? It's supposed to have been a short deal. Now it's been years.
One man. Is he willing to find a diplomatic off-ramp? And he could. Trump can easily reverse himself.
He could say tomorrow it's a victory.
And his base will be fine with it. Or is he emotionally now charged in that way that people often do in these imperial traps, where he wants to throw good money after bad, where he has to in some way show that he's won?
The president seemed to indicate yesterday that he had not been briefed on the potential that Iran might strike out at its neighbors or try to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Is that conceivable to you, that he would not have been briefed on those potential repercussions?
Well, I know for a fact that he was aware of those potentials. I raised the option of regime change in Iran several times.
And guys, just as a side note, because this week I've been featuring different individuals that have spoken up against the president, and now they're in hot water. So right here on the screen, we have another example of John Bolton. Right now, he's facing federal charges too. So that's something to keep in mind. He's another individual.
During the time I was national security advisor, I never persuaded the president to adopt that position, and one reason was that others had different views, and every time I raised it, they raised a...
That's right. AI hits the nail on the head, says this is empire expansion. That's what all that we're seeing at a grand scale. That's what it boils down to. Thank you. Good job, AI.
Whole long list of difficulties that are entailed by a regime change campaign, and that if you're going to embark on it, you better have answers to them. And certainly closing the Strait of Hormuz was always one of them, and so were attacks on the Gulf Arab states, particularly their oil infrastructure. So he knew about it in his first term. I find it hard to believe that he forgot about it in the intervening years.
Okay, guys. Notice what James says. James says, it's a different world. Wake the hell up. We don't need to make the biggest mistake in history and allow such a horrifying regime acquire a nuclear weapon. Thank you.
His comments about NATO today and his, anger, whatever, however you want to describe it, over NATO allies not jumping to support this operation. Do you think this has long-lasting impact on his relationship with NATO and the U.S. relationship with NATO?
Well, he talks about NATO as if it's some organization separate from the United States. What he's complaining about is not NATO. He's complaining about the decision of European members of NATO. And, you know, usually when you want a coalition to help you in a war, you form it before the war starts. I mean, that's just sort of experience speaking. And he made no effort to do it. And it's also the case that European leaders are tired of being criticized by him. It's a juvenile performance by the president. But I will say, I think the Europeans make a mistake by responding to that kind of juvenile behavior with juvenile behavior of their own. A number of European leaders, including Kaja Kallas, the European Union's chief foreign policy official, have said expressly, Iran is not our war.
So we definitely get the idea of what's happening here. For the sake of time, we have to keep moving. We're going to look at another issue when it comes to the President Trump and the war with Iran. And keep in mind, for those of you that are just coming in, hit the like button, share, subscribe. But also tonight at 8 p.m. is the deadline for Iran to either poop or get off the pot. They have to make this deal by 8 p.m. or the president says he's going to hit them like never before, even though the United States has been hitting Iran over the last 2 days beyond compare. But let's see what's happening here.
Right now, we begin with the bold U.S. military rescue deep inside Iran. An Air Force officer evading enemy forces in rugged mountains for nearly 2 days. This after his F-15E fighter jet was shot down. U.S. Special Operations launching a dangerous night mission.
Okay, guys, Anderson says no poop tonight. Sorry, folks. It looks like Iran is going to go in.
Racing against Iranian troops to reach the injured airman first. Officials say he is now safe. Joining me now on the phone is TheHill.com's Julia Manchester, who just got off the phone with President Trump. Julia, good afternoon. Break it down for us.
It's amazing how the United States went in and rescued these airmen, right? It's beyond compare.
Because I'm sure the commander-in-chief had a lot to say.
Hey, Nick. Yeah, this was a very brief phone call with President Trump. But in the phone call, he essentially said that he was not ruling out ground troops if Iran does not make a deal. This obviously comes.
So now we have to focus on this. Imagine on top of all this happening, there's a good chance that this could turn into a nuclear event. But as a side note, we could also perhaps take the direction where they send in troops on the ground, boots on the ground. What does that look like? A lot of people are trying to figure out how is this going to affect, because we have a lot of people, I'm sure, if you have someone in the military in your family, put a 1 in the chat. Let's see how many people have family members that are in the military.
After he's threatened to obliterate Iran using very strong language this morning in a number of Truth Social posts and also in a number of phone interviews. President Trump, of course, is in Washington this weekend and has been monitoring the situation from the White House. He was at the golf course earlier today, but President Trump saying he is not.
So already we have a multitude of people. Military families are represented quite well here. I just had an individual that went out to Germany, so I keep talking about it. It's very important times. That's why we want to cover this and make sure everybody is up to speed to what's happening.
Not ruling out ground troops. And then when I asked if he was optimistic that if Iran would make a deal, he essentially.
Okay, guys, Gamer says, I have several in my family. So that's a lot of pressure, right? A lot of pressure. And thank you for supporting such brave individuals.
Did not answer whether he was optimistic, but said if he was smart, they would make. If they were smart, excuse me. If Iran was smart, they would make a deal. So President Trump not ruling out potential ground troops as we really see an escalation in rhetoric in the Iran war.
Julia, let's talk about that escalation in rhetoric.
Okay, we have Shada. Shada says, I have several family members in different branches. Shout out to you. I know in some way you help those individuals, and it's a beautiful thing that we have brave people serving for the country.
Because if we were indeed to have ground troops hit the grounds of Iran.
I thought it was quite interesting, the motto that these individuals have in the Navy. I think these SEALs says, so that others can live. What a brave attitude for individuals to have so that Americans can definitely enjoy freedom. So we have to be very balanced when we view these matters. There's never, everybody, if I was to poll each individual here, everybody would have a different take on it. The key is to try to do things smart, but not just unnecessarily taking people's lives like what we're seeing at some of these levels.
We know that that would go against his America First agenda.
It would go against the America First agenda, you would think, at surface level. However, we do know that in the past, President Trump has been adamant, saying that it is America First to go after Iran because he is protecting Americans if Iran were to get a nuclear weapon. So that's the argument there from President Trump. But look, ground troops could lead to another escalation, and an escalation that maybe some even Republicans aren't exactly ready for. So going forward, I think it's going to be some tough decisions. But we do know that President Trump said earlier today in an interview with Fox News, I told you he's been working the phones with reporters, that he expects to potentially make a deal by tomorrow.
Julia, we know that this has been a busy week.
I just saw a report here in New York where we have to be cautious going over bridges because I guess they imagine there could be some retaliation because the largest bridge in Iran was taken out. In fact, it was under construction, had been under construction for a very long time, for years. And the government went in, our government went in and wiped out the bridge. And the president has boasted about it several times. So that's why here, with the threat of sleeper cells, we don't look at bridges the same as we try to cross. It's become quite a phenomenon here. And so we have to wonder, Iran has already said that if, because the president says he's going to hit their water sources and also bridges and so forth, power, Iran is saying that they're going to hit the neighbors in a similar way, neighbors who are not necessarily involved in this war. Let me show you what Iran has done to some individuals that are regular civilians. What a sad case. So this is an apartment building. You see a regular apartment building that Iran had wiped out from one of the neighbors. They're not afraid to take out innocent people because of what's happening in their particular country. So you get an idea of what could happen or what more than likely is going to happen if everything kicks off tonight after 8 p.m. that the president has mentioned. But these are some perilous times indeed, not to be fear-inspiring or fear-mongering, but just stating the facts so you understand what's happening around in our world, because eventually it all comes knocking at your door, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not. So that's why it's important for us to cover these matters. And also, I try to cover it in a way where you're getting a full picture and not just some slanted story for somebody that's trying to push you a narrative or an agenda. Let's move on. I want to show you this other story that I find to be quite intriguing.
Our objective is not to be the vassals.
Notice what the leader of France, Macron, notice what he has to say. He takes a lot of shots at our president of the United States. I want you to understand what some of the members of NATO, how they're viewing the American leadership.
Of two hegemonic power. None of this hegemonic power, I would say. And we don't want to depend on the dominance, let's say, on China, or we don't want to be too much exposed to the unpredictability of the US. Having such an agenda shared by Korea, France, and bringing with us the other Europeans, Canada, Japan, India, Brazil, Australia, you start having a sort of third way. The global order was based on the post-World War II era, and by the way, after the war that your country had to deliver in order to preserve its independence and sovereignty. But during decades, we had a so-called stability based on this international order and the few certainties we had. It's up and down now. The problem we have is the day the main countries with the highest responsibility start to jeopardize themselves the international order. What we have to do is to stick to the principles. We signed a charter building the United Nations. And the day you start creating yourself double standard, what is your credibility to avoid war? The day you say, I don't like your regime, I don't like your organization, I consider you are threatening your neighbor, so I will intervene and bomb you. You open a Pandora box. Because nobody, I mean...
Guys, I'm going to show you the video. His wife actually roughed him up. The president actually reposted it, but it's not funny, but yeah, she roughed him up. I'm going to show you that a little bit later.
Why shouldn't the other do the same?
So yes, we have these other countries talking negatively about the president, about our positions, our stance, and keep in mind what happened over the last week when the president asked them to help with the Strait of Hormuz. What happened, folks? They said no. In fact, some of the different places, such as Spain, said you can't even land in our airports, right? Speaking of airplanes, I want to show you something that happened last weekend. Actually, while I was traveling on an airplane, this happened. Glad it wasn't my airplane. But I want to show you how this airplane landed on the road. Imagine, what would you do if you're driving down the road and you see something like this?
Dashcam video captures the shocking moment a Pennsylvania highway turns into a runway. First responders rushing to the scene.
Has the airport been notified? Tower.
A small prop plane threading between speeding cars Saturday morning on Interstate 78 outside Allentown, Pennsylvania. An incredible emergency landing, stunning drivers on the road.
Wow. You see this in the news, you don't see this in real life.
The FAA says 2 people were on board this Rockwell Commander reporting engine issues. State police say the 2 were on their way to the NCAA basketball tournament in Indiana. They may be late to the game, but they're safe and uninjured tonight.
Ooh, that has to be quite terrifying, right? To see it in your rear view or in front of you, any way it comes down. And just imagine if you're on an airplane as well.
It is pretty remarkable, but fortunately there were no injuries. He did the best he could given the...
Okay, guys, Gary says, welcome in, Gary. Thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. Please hit the like button as well. Gary says, this is Trump's and Netanyahu's mess. They should clean it up. Let them clean it up. Let's see what Pretty Tings has to say. She says, I don't like Trump, Netanyahu, or Putin. I do like Macron and Zelensky. Okay. Thank you for your information, your thoughts. Thank you very much. JH says Spain will be one of the first countries to fall if NATO dissolves. Thank you.
Circumstances.
The plane bringing traffic on the interstate's eastbound lanes to a standstill.
Cars have started to try.
You know, I've been traveling. I've seen helicopters on the road rescuing from an accident, but I've never seen an airplane land on the highway. Has anyone in the audience, some 500 people, has anyone seen anything like this before?
To turn around on the interstate.
Aerial views show a line of vehicles backed as far as the eye can see as first responders worked to tow the plane.
As it got closer, I was like, that plane's really freaking close.
Thank you very much, Anderson. I really do appreciate hearing that from you. And I'm glad you've chosen to subscribe and hang out with us. It means a lot. We have Grumpy in the building, guys. Go check out Grumpy's channel. He's dropping good comedy and good facts all day long. Grumpy, shout out to you. This is his channel here. Grumpy 7921. He's a good man indeed. Caprello's here. Caprello is a strong Trump supporter. He loves Trump. He thinks about Trump all day long. He wants to be Trump. He wished Trump was his uncle. He just loves him some Trump. But Caprello, shout out to you. Says White Palette is a legend. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on. And this is something that I really want you guys to heed and take it to heart. A Good Samaritan, right? Remember in the Bible, it talks about the Good Samaritan. That's where that topic comes from, the Greek, right? A good Samaritan gets jammed up by someone they're trying to help. So we have to be careful this day and time when it comes to helping people. You might end up needing help, right? That's if you survive. Let's check this out. Quite a sad story.
A man says he was afraid for his life as he was attacked by a man who he stopped to help on the side of a Central Florida expressway.
That man is now in jail facing multiple charges. This happened Monday morning on the 429 expressway near the Seidel Road exit in Winter Garden. West 2's Justin Shecker talked with the victim.
I don't want to lose my humanity. We're put on this earth to help each other.
And that's exactly what Hans Hamilton tried to do Monday morning on the 429 expressway in Winter Garden.
I saw a car crash. I saw a door open. So being a good person, any human being would see, you would just pull over to check.
As Hamilton parks his Tesla, the man in the red t-shirt appeared to be lying motionless on the ground next to a white Lexus that had slammed into a guardrail.
I rolled down my window. Hey, are you okay? Are you okay? No response. So I'm thinking, this person's dead. So I open up my car door.
Put a 1 in the chat if you would stop on side the road to help someone, being a good Samaritan. Put a 2 if you would never stop unless you really can identify the person, you know them well. Let's see. Do we have any good Samaritans in the building? And shout out, we have a super chat. Membership gifted by Anderson. So shout out to the new member. I have a great membership lecture coming up tonight. I think everybody's going to really like it. We're going to talk about the subject when it comes to labels and also attachments. A lot of people cannot decipher between love and being attached to a person. There's a big difference. A lot of times, even when people break up, and I don't want to get into this whole subject right now, but we will get into it tonight. People think they love someone when they're just attached to them. A lot of the pain and sorrow comes from attachment. We're going to get into that, but that's a whole different subject matter. As far as the question, though, we see, I think we're pretty balanced. Some people said they would stop on side the road to help someone. Others are saying they wouldn't. So I see we have a balanced group here. Grumpy says, difference between love and lust is a stick of gum. All right. You'll have to come on and tell us all about that too, Grumpy, when we get into that later. Thank you.
As soon as I opened that car door, he was off that ground. So he was waiting.
This video from a camera in his car shows the man hop on the hood of the Tesla, and he starts stomping on the windshield.
So that's on a little incline at 429. It pulled me out of my car. As I was falling backwards, he was jumping off the roof on top of me. And that's when he started kicking and pummeling me.
A different camera captured the ambush attack and the man repeatedly punching his head.
I know on the back of my head they counted 8 different bumps, plus the kicks to the jaw, which I can finally today, I'm able to eat a thin sandwich, but I still can't open my mouth all the way.
Hamilton says the suspect, later identified as 44-year-old Daniel Coman, threatened to take his life.
The whole time he's hitting me, he's telling me he's going to kill me. And he didn't just tell me. His eyes were void of any humanity. I believed it.
He seems like a guy that would stop to try to help somebody. He comes across as a good Samaritan, right?
So when I was fighting, I knew the last thing I was going to see was not that ground.
Hamilton explained how he managed to get off the ground and away from his attacker.
I cannot beat him strength-wise. So I have to try to incapacitate him. So I think I was pommeling in his jugular vein in his neck.
Deputies arrested
Well, he said he could not beat him. That's not the attitude to have. You always have to go in prepared to fight to the end. Believe you me, you just can't lay there and let somebody pound on you like that, for sure.
Coman for battery and criminal mischief for what he did to Hamilton and his car. He's also facing charges of resisting with violence, as well as assault and battery on the first responding deputy.
All right, AP says the person was possessed. I was thinking maybe the person was high off or something, or just ready to go to war, wanted to go to battle, right? Thank you guys for all of the great comments I see rolling in. Thank you very much. Now we're going to switch up a little bit. I want to talk about Sean Diddy Combs. This week he has court in New York City. He's trying to appeal his case. A lot of people have different ideas when it comes to the outcome. Last Sunday, we had the criminal defense attorney Calvin Johnson on, and basically he was talking about Sean Diddy Combs and how it's very unlikely that he would win the appeal, but many feel like maybe he could pull this off. We're going to take a look at it and see what's happening this week.
Diddy Combs' release date has changed once again. The rap mogul, who is
Deborah says, high on spice. Now, that is too funny. Caprello says, Diddy is black excellence. Thank you.
currently serving a 50-month sentence for convictions on 2 prostitution-related charges, will now be released April 15th.
So this is very important. I want to break this down. As you guys know, I attended Sean Diddy Combs' trial for 9 weeks.
2028, according to Federal Bureau of Prisons records viewed by E! News. Combs' new release date is 10 days less than his previous.
If you notice, she said that he walked away with 2 charges in regards to convictions regarding basically prostitution. Okay. Now, the way that his criminal defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo, explained it is that typically when a guy gets charged for maybe a guy goes strolling through the hood or downtown, picks up a prostitute or 2 separate occasions, if he would have to go to court, typically under those circumstances, he might get 6 months at the worst scenario, right? But when it came to Sean Diddy Combs, that argument did not stand up. And let me explain to you why. The judge in this particular case chose to use his previous bad acts, the previous bad acts of Sean Diddy Combs. So during his entire trial for 9 weeks, I was there every day in the main courtroom sitting behind Sean Diddy Combs. I saw Cassie come in. I saw a lot of different witnesses take the stand. There were some men that actually came into the courtroom, and they were actually dancers who turned out to be gigolos or to be male prostitutes of some sort. This all came out within the trial. But there was a main charge that Diddy had of RICO, which basically had way more downsides. In fact, if he was found guilty, he could have spent life in prison. Also, he could have lost his assets, okay? Now, when it came to the details that many of these witnesses talked about, some talked about, you actually saw the video of Cassie being beaten on the ground. On the first day of the trial, they showed her being kicked. I think they showed that video 8 or 9 times, I counted, okay? You also had another girl come in. I think her name was Bonner. She said that Diddy had her hanging over the balcony, but under cross-examination, Westmoreland really tore her apart and showed that maybe he didn't have you hanging over the balcony and you're making up these stories because you're trying to get money out of Sean Diddy Combs. So we saw a variation, a lot of tug of war going back and forth when it came to Sean Diddy Combs' trial. But in the end, when it came down to the sentencing, the judge actually, even though the jury found Sean Diddy Combs not guilty for the 3 main charges, right? Even though the jury found him not guilty, the judge decided to factor in the bad acts that came out in the court proceeding, and that's the reason why he received those 50 months, okay? Now, keep in mind that Calvin Johnson, he had predicted that Sean Diddy Combs would get, I believe, 49 months or either 51 months, something like that, and Sean Diddy Combs ended up getting 50 months. So I say all of that to set the stage for this Thursday. Sean Diddy Combs will be back in court. We'll be there, boots on the ground, covering the oral arguments for his appeal. Now, I think, let's see if I can remember her name. Shapiro, I believe, is his attorney. She's one of the leading appeal attorneys in the nation, and that's who's going to be representing him in regards to this appeal. So I'm pretty sure we'll be in court for just 1 day, but I imagine it's going to be a day of days because these arguments are going to be so amazing as we hear from these attorneys that I think, quite frankly, with Sean Diddy Combs' attorney, Mark Agnifilo, I've seen him represent the Alexander brothers, and I've also been in court to see him represent Luigi Mangione for his state and also for the federal. So Mark Agnifilo has been in court for all of these trials, and I also heard that he's going to be covering Harvey Weinstein. I covered his case too. I will be covering his case coming up. I'll also be covering Chris Brown out in London. So many cases coming through, especially when it comes to Carmelo Anthony down in Texas. I have Tyler Robertson out in Utah. So this year I'll be traveling more or less covering these cases to help you understand what's happening in regards to them. Now, this time we're going to switch gears. Technically, at this point, I would typically end the show here and tell you guys thank you so much for all the likes, shares, and subscriptions. But over the last couple of days, I had been traveling and I missed out on quite a few very important stories. Okay. So today we're going to take some time now and we're going to break off from our news at noon and we're going to cover Pam Bondi because I think it's very important for us to understand what really happened to Pam Bondi and why was she fired by the President of the United States. It ties in so nicely with the Epstein files. And I think that it's going to actually make matters a lot clearer for us in trying to understand what's happening, not only with the war, but also what's happening when it comes to this administration, especially when it comes to the president. So at this time, I'm going to show you guys a few things in regards to Pam Bondi. We're going to take our time and I'm going to build a narrative that you walk away and you understand why she was fired. Now, before I tell you that story, I have to take you guys back to court. So stay with me for a while as I explain this to you. I think it's going to make the story about Pam Bondi more advantageous for you if you just listen to what I'm about to lay out for you. I attended Donald J. Trump's trial in New York City. So I went to his trial. It was at 100 Center Street here in Manhattan, New York, okay? The attorney that the President of the United States, this trial happened after he lost to Joe Biden. So maybe about 2 years into Joe Biden's reign, right, we'll call it, Donald Trump had to go to court and sit in the seat that was waiting for him. Well, let me explain that to you as well. So you have to take some time and stick with me here. When the President of the United States won the first time around, his attorney, Michael Cohen, who we're going to have on the show coming up, he was indicted in regards to Stormy Daniels and some other matters. In that particular court case that I covered as well, there was a co-conspirator who was not named in that case. So what I did, I went on to Facebook and I said to everyone, I said that the President of the United States, because at that time, Donald Trump was the president. And I said, Michael Cohen received, I believe, he had to serve 2 years. I said that the reason why the co-conspirator is not named in this particular document is because the co-conspirator is none other than the President of the United States. And I said that one day he's going to have to come and sit in that seat. And that's what happened. He lost to Joe Biden. And guess what? The Southern District of New York came calling for him and they made him sit in that seat. So then the President of the United States came into the courtroom. I would attend the court proceeding. I was actually in the courtroom when Costello was there. He got into it with the judge, and the judge made all of us leave out of the courtroom. But the president came out the same as myself. He would walk past me. When the judge kicked us out of the courtroom, all of us had to come and stand in the foyer area. And so the president was there just standing right there with the rest of us who were just covering the case, okay? So ultimately, the President of the United States received 34 felonies. A lot of people are saying that this is at the state level. A lot of people are saying that it's quite bogus, okay? But here's the key point that you have to understand about this case, okay? Todd Blanche represented the president for his personal matter in New York City court. Okay. I met Todd Blanche. I have photos with him. We didn't know that the president was going to actually win again. I was just there documenting history, just as I often do with these cases. So I had a chance to meet Todd Blanche and his team. Well, lo and behold, who's the man in charge now that took the Pam Bondi. It's Todd Blanche. So he went from, and this is my point for you guys to understand, Todd Blanche went from representing the president in his personal life. I was in court with Todd Blanche. I heard his arguments. I saw his team. We'd rub shoulders that way. And then who would knew that he would now be serving, right, sitting in the top seat in the defense for the President of the United States with the Department of Justice. So you see how this man came from the personal into the government. That's important for you to understand, okay? So now that he's actually taken the place of Pam Bondi, you'll start to realize that this all connects with the Epstein files as well. When Ghislaine Maxwell, they had to meet with her. Guess who they sent to meet with her? It was Todd Blanche. So Todd Blanche, in essence, you could say he replaced Michael Cohen, who was the president's first attorney, we'll say first, the one that actually had to go do time because of certain things that he did along with the president, allegedly. And in court, it turned out to be found guilty, okay? Whether you agree with that or not, that's on you. I'm just telling you how the facts went down. So Todd Blanche, he went to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell. And remember, Ghislaine Maxwell, when Todd Blanche met with her, she said the president did nothing wrong. I never saw the president doing anything with girls. She says, I didn't even really see Epstein doing anything wrong. Okay, so you have to keep this in mind. So Todd Blanche met with her in the prison. After he left from her, within a week or two, she was moved to a softer prison camp. A prison camp that you cannot go there if you've been guilty of any type of SA. But she was made an exception. Okay, so I'm trying to help you guys understand the big picture. So again, just for narrative's sake, Todd Blanche, who is now taking the place of Pam Bondi, who we're about to cover, right? He was Donald Trump's personal attorney in the Stormy Daniels case, where the president received 34 felonies. It was those were state charges, so the president cannot pardon himself. If they were federal, he could have wiped them away. So that's why those 34 charges still stand. Todd Blanche, when the president won, he became, right, a part leading the way in the Department of Justice, now to the point that he's taken the place of Pam Bondi. I say all of that so you can start to understand as I break down why Pam Bondi was fired. And when you hear Todd Blanche talking, it's important for you to factor in what I just told you. So let's get to it. I guess it'll take us another hour, but we have time for it today, so we're going to get to it. Thank you very much for all the support. Hit the like button, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate you guys tremendously, but let's get to it.
Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi were side by side on their way to the Supreme Court. This afternoon, she's out of a job. Sources tell CBS News it comes amid the president's dissatisfaction with how aggressively she pursued his priorities, including prosecutions of perceived political enemies.
I took office with two main goals: to end the weaponization of justice and return the department to its core mission of fighting violent crime.
The president, in announcing the change on social media, called Bondi a great American patriot and a loyal friend. He went on to say she will be transitioning to a new job in the private sector. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal attorney, will now lead the Department of Justice as acting AG.
Okay, so this is Todd Blanche, the gentleman that I was talking about that I met during the trial here in New York for the President of the United States. So far, I've been around two presidents, Bill Clinton and also Donald J. Trump.
At a political conference last week, he talked about cleaning out DOJ employees who worked on cases prosecuting President Trump.
There is not a single man or woman at the Department of Justice who had anything to do with those prosecutions.
How many have been canned?
Over 200.
So the word on the street that I want you guys to keep in mind, the reason why Pam Bondi gets canned, why she's fired. Remember the show The Apprentice? You're fired. The The reason why she was fired is because one of the reasons is because she did not do a great job in going after the president's political enemies, as far as the individuals such as Letitia James, James Comey. You down in Georgia, you guys see what's happening. John Bolton. He felt like a lot of these cases were stagnant, and these are the individuals who previously had indicted him, led the charges against him, and he felt like she was not really putting the screws to these individuals. I say that lightly, but she was not doing a good job at getting revenge in a way.
Senate will have to confirm the president's eventual pick to replace Bondi. Sources say the possibilities include EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin.
During Bondi's time leading DOJ, the department did pursue criminal investigations into President Trump's perceived adversaries, including former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Both cases were dismissed. She's also faced heat over the release of DOJ files related to the Jeffrey Epstein case.
Okay, very good. So that gives you an idea of what happened, but I want to show you what set the stage for this to happen in regards to Kennedy. This senator, I tell you what, he is definitely one because he's also the person that was the catalyst for taking out Kristi Noem as well. So let's get to this. I want to show you guys how he really made it very hard for Pam Bondi to answer these very important questions.
Let's suppose that I'm appointed special counsel at the Department of Justice, and I go to the telecommunication companies, the phone companies. Let's single out AT&T, and I say, look, I know you're busy, but I want to see a copy of the phone records of a sitting United States senator. They're not going to just give them to me, are they?
No, Senator, of course not.
In fact, they're probably going to ask me what planet I just parachuted in from, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
They're going to tell
Guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Thank you.
me to come back with a subpoena, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. What do I have to show in that subpoena to get those phone records of a sitting? Did I mention it was?
Now, I want you guys to keep in mind, remember when Kristi Noem was questioned by Kennedy? She was fired. We saw the same thing happen with Pam Bondi. You have to pay attention to how this all materialized.
A sitting United States senator? I can't remember. What do I have to show to get the phone records of a sitting United States senator?
Yes, Senator, there were actually 8 sitting United States
Yeah, I
senators,
heard that.
and you would
I
have
heard
to
that.
have cause.
I'm sorry, what do I have to show?
You would have to have cause to get the
Good cause
subpoena.
or probable cause?
Probable cause.
Okay. Probable cause, or if it's a subpoena deuces take 'em, good cause to show what?
You would need good cause for a subpoena ducis tecum, and what you would have to show is that you believed a crime had been committed, or there was a possibility of a crime, or that could lead to other crimes. We
By the
frequently in criminal enterprises subpoena cell
By the
phones.
sitting United States senator.
Senator, they would have to have believed you were part of a criminal conspiracy, is my understanding.
Would a judge have to sign off on it? On the subpoena?
Yes, Senator. Well, for a subpoena ducis tecum, Jack Smith probably took it straight to the judge.
Now, the phone companies, particularly their general counsel, if they're worried about civil liability, even with a subpoena to get the phone records of a sitting United States senator. Did I mention it was a sitting United States senator?
Yes, Senator.
The general counsel for that phone company, let's say AT&T, they have the right to seek to quash that subpoena, don't they?
Phone companies frequently do that.
Yeah. And a smart general counsel for that phone company is going to call the sitting United States senator and say, would you like to weigh in on this? Would you like me to quash the subpoena? We're talking about invading someone's privacy here by a sitting United States senator. Could the general counsel for the phone company do that?
Well, Senator, if they believe that a crime could have been committed, they could not tip off the person who committed the crime. Again, I can't comment on details of this particular case.
I'm just asking you theoretically.
I've never seen you commit a crime, Senator Kennedy.
But let's suppose, okay, they didn't want to tip off the sitting United States senator, but the phone company and the general counsel for the phone company, or companies, if there were more than one involved, could say, you know, this is serious as an aneurysm. This is serious as 4 heart attacks and a stroke. This is a sitting United States senator. So general counsel would likely advise the CEO, well, you need to file a motion to quash. The telephone companies could have contested those subpoenas, could they not?
Hypothetically, yes. I can't talk about the facts of this particular case.
We're talking hypothetical.
Senator, subpoenas are issued all the time through phone companies working with the general counsel.
But they can file a motion to quash.
They could, yes.
Yeah.
In any case.
And if they should have filed a motion.
Guys, thank you for all the support. Take a moment, try to put a globe in the chat if you can. Thank you very much.
Motion to quash. And a reasonable person would have filed a motion to quash because this is a sitting United States senator. And they didn't file a motion to quash. They would incur civil liability, wouldn't they?
Senator, typically phone companies follow a subpoena from a United States attorney.
I know they do, but they don't have to.
They could challenge it, Senator.
Yeah. And if they don't challenge it, they better have a damn good reason. Right? Right?
Senator, I can't talk about the facts of this particular
This is just
case.
a hypothetical.
In general, hypothetically, Senator, maybe they didn't recognize any of the names of the 8 sitting United States senators.
Hypothetically.
That was a joke.
Or maybe they should have gone to Amazon and buy some testicles online. Instead of just saying, sure, I'll just show you the phone records of a sitting United States senator on the basis of an administrative subpoena. Now, do you have copies of the subpoena applications for
Yes,
these
Senator,
8?
Senator, I can't discuss anything regarding
You
this
can't
case
even
with
tell me if you have copies?
I can't discuss any of this.
All right,
with
when
you,
are you
I'm sorry.
going to, General, when are you going to be able to discuss it?
I can't discuss whether there is or is not a pending investigation,
I understand,
Senator. This
but
was
let's
just
assume
brought to light
if
by
there is a
Director
pending investigation, I don't want this to get swept under the rug, okay? Because I think you're going to get pushed back from all quarters. I think the telecommunication companies are going to be all over you like a bad rash because they've got liability here for just turning over these records when they knew what was going on. I think some FBI agents may have some liability here. I think a special counsel might have some liability here. If I were your special counsel and you had appointed me and I wanted to get the records of a sitting United States senator, is that something you would expect me to tell you as Attorney General of the United States?
They better have.
Yeah.
And
do we know in this instance of the 8 sitting United States senators if they told Attorney General Garland?
Senator, I just learned about this very recently, as did Director Patel, and we cannot discuss the details. I don't know many of the details.
Well, maybe we ought to get Attorney General Garland here. Do you know if the special counsel told FBI Director Wray? Is that something, let me put it another way. If I were your special counsel and you were the director of the FBI and I'm trying to get the phone records of a sitting United States senator, did I mention it was a sitting United States senator? Is that something that you would expect me to tell you as director of the FBI?
In general, I would believe the FBI would help execute the subpoenas.
Yeah.
To the
businesses. Okay, I want to switch to another subject in the 12 minutes that I have left, since everybody else got to go over. I've got to ask you about this, General. Secretary Howard Lutnick on October 1 gave an interview to the New York Post about Mr. Epstein. And he described Mr. Epstein as, quote, the greatest blackmailer ever, close quote. Have you reviewed that transcript of that interview?
I have not reviewed the transcript, but I saw the clip of it.
Okay. It appears that Secretary Lutnick was Mr. Epstein's next door neighbor. In fact, their townhomes shared a wall. And the reporter that was talking to Mr. Lutnick, she asked how other prominent men could have been associated with Epstein when Mr. Lutnick could immediately sense that he was a, quote, pervert. And then Secretary Lutnick said, or rather the reporter said, did they see it and ignore it?
So guys, I just want to take a moment and tell you that Lutnick is currently a key part of the president's administration. In fact, a lot of times when the president is gaggling on the Air Force One, you'll see Lutnick over his shoulder in the background, okay? So it's very important to fit all of these pieces of the puzzle together.
Do you remember that from the interview?
I do.
And Commerce Secretary.
And that guy was Epstein's neighbor, okay? They shared a wall on their townhouses. That's how close.
Secretary Lutnick said, no, they participated. And then Commerce Secretary Lutnick goes on to say, quote, that's what his MO was. You know, get a massage, get a massage. And what happened in that massage room, I assume, was a video. This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever, blackmailed people. That's how he had money, end quote. Is that true?
Now you're starting to see, keep in mind, she gets fired shortly after this. Put all this together.
Senator, as our July memo said, we did not uncover evidence. This case has gone through 3 administrations, as well as former U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta.
I know that, Pam, but have you interviewed Secretary Lutnick?
No, Senator.
Do you plan to?
If he wants to talk to the FBI or the FBI wants to talk to him, that is more than on.
Don't you think you ought to talk to him after this interview?
Senator, if Howard Lutnick wants to speak to the FBI and if Director Patel wants to speak to Howard Lutnick, absolutely.
Okay. Maybe we ought to get Mr. Lutnick in here too, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So he's definitely, I like this guy, man. He's really on the ball when it comes to all of this. All right. So we're going to keep moving here. We're going to look at this at a different angle, still covering Pam Bondi. Let's get to it. Thank you, guys. Hit the like button, share, subscribe.
Out as Attorney General. Earlier this week, she was by President Trump's side when he made the unprecedented move to attend the Supreme Court hearing. But on Thursday, the president posting, "We love Pam. She'll be transitioning to a new job in the private sector," where Bondi says she's thrilled to continue fighting for President Trump. 2 sources familiar with the matter telling NBC News Trump and Bondi had a heated confrontation at the White House last
week,
although the sources did not specify what it was about. Replacing her for now, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who once served as the president's personal defense lawyer during his hush money trial in New York.
Remember, I just broke that down for you guys. I gave you the top seat explanation, and they said it here, served as his hush money attorney for his personal case where he received 34 felonies, right? I'm just helping you understand the big picture. Now he's taken Pam Bondi's place temporarily.
Bondi is a former Florida attorney general who served on President Trump's defense team during his first impeachment trial.
Thank you, Molly, for the super chat. Thanks for supporting the channel. You're far too kind. I really do appreciate you. Thank you.
May God.
As the U.S. Attorney General, she was a lightning rod,
You don't tell me.
Yeah, oh, I did tell you.
repeatedly clashing with Democrats, but drawing praise from the president.
She's going to go down as a great attorney general. I may change my mind about that.
Still, last September, the president posted publicly on social media what an administration official says was intended to be a direct message to Bondi, pressuring her to prosecute his political opponents.
I'm looking at Pam because I hope something's going to be done about it.
She drew criticism from across the political spectrum for her handling of the Epstein files, including from inside the White House. Chief of Staff Susie Wiles telling Vanity Fair back in December that Bondi, quote, whiffed the release. At one point, Bondi claimed the DOJ had the late sex offender's client list.
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
But later,
She said it was sitting on her desk, and guess what? Guess what happened later? She couldn't find them.
reversing course.
Our memo on Epstein clearly points out that there was no client list.
Congress recently subpoenaed Bondi to testify about the Epstein investigation.
We got to ensure that the truth with this investigation still gets out.
The family of Epstein accuser, the late Virginia Giuffre, writing in a statement, "We hope she has the courage to testify and actually do right by survivors this time."
There was also significant shakeup at the Pentagon overnight. 3 U.S. officials tell NBC News that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth just fired 3 Army generals, among them Army Chief of Staff General Randy George, who had been a top advisor to Biden Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Craig?
Gabe Gutierrez starting us off there at the White House. Gabe, thank you. For more now on the cabinet shakeup and the impact, reaction. Let's bring in Kristen Welker, moderator of Meet the Press. Kristen, good morning to you. So, Kristen, I mean, Pam Bondi, by all accounts, was pretty loyal to the president, went after his perceived political enemies from time to time. She was even at the White House the night before the announcement came out. What do we know about what finally tipped the scales?
Well, Craig, look, based on my conversations and NBC's reporting, President Trump's frustration with Attorney General Pam Bondi had been building over time, but in recent months really centered around 2 main flashpoints. Her handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. There was this perception that she was responsible for a series of missteps, and her inability to effectively prosecute his perceived political enemies, like former FBI Director James Comey. Now, Craig, look, we have to note, it's hard to know if anyone else would have been more effective given the constraints.
All right, put a 1 in the chat if you felt like Pam Bondi was loyal to the President of the United States. Put a 2 if you felt like she wasn't, or a 3 if you just don't care. Tell us how you feel.
Of the law. Bondi was deeply loyal, though, to Trump, and it's clear that just wasn't enough to save her job. The fact that she's now been ousted just weeks after Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, Craig, raises some real questions about whether others in the administration could be next. So that's part of what we'll be watching for here.
Kristen, the number 2 at DOJ.
My heavens, if this is how the loyal goes out and gets fired, what happens if you're not so? And what's going to happen to Kash Patel? Word on the street is that he's up next. Did you see the video of him dancing? And the president also had to tell him to cool it a couple months back because he was drinking on video. You know, the president of the United States is not a big fan of drinking, and especially in public. So, in fact, he gives all of the guys there, his key administration, their shoes. He likes them to wear those black shiny shoes, right? Church shoes, right? And Rubio, his is a little too big. So the word on the street is that Rubio didn't have the heart to tell the president he gave him the wrong size. So out of loyalty and love, he's just wearing a size that's too big, like the Three Stooges.
Rod Blanche is now going to be the acting attorney general, someone you've interviewed before. Any sense that he might actually get the top job? And if not, who?
Laura, great question. Look, Blanche is absolutely one of the names we are hearing who could be a replacement. He's incredibly loyal to the president, having served as his personal attorney. He's also, it's worth noting, been the public face of the Department of Justice on some of the thorniest issues, from the Epstein files to questions surrounding ICE enforcement in Minneapolis. Now, another person the president is eyeing for the job, according to sources familiar with his thinking, the administrator.
So I just want to unpack this for you a little bit more. When it comes to Pam Bondi, back in May, remember now, all of this started with the Epstein files. is because Elon Musk, he was very agitated with the president of the United States, and he says President Trump is the Epstein files. So he says Trump is, and that's when everybody started paying attention to the Epstein files. Really, I mean, it was still floating, but that's what put all eyes on the Epstein files. So Pam Bondi came out. She says, you guys heard in the video, she says, these files are on my desk, right? Well, lo and behold, there's like 6 million files, and each of those files have a different array of folders and pages. So how can you have over 6 million files on your desk? Even still to date, they haven't released all of the files. And with the firing of Pam Bondi, now Todd Blanche is saying, listen, we got to move on from the Epstein files. Basically, it's a bunch of nothing burger. So I doubt if we'll see much coming forth from the Epstein files going forward. But what does this mean? The only way that you'll probably see anything materialize with the Epstein files, because remember when I went to the Clintons' deposition, one of the things that people were saying is if the Democrats win, as the president says, bigly, if the Democrats win bigly for the midterm elections, then and only then they're going to try to have the president and his wife come and sit for a deposition just like the Clintons had. And this is what I heard some of the representatives saying at the Clintons' deposition. Okay, so it's very important that you put all of these pieces of the puzzle together. And also on a different track, keep in mind all the information we covered here today at lunch in regards to the war, because when I come back on tonight to cover what's going to happen after 8, it's good that we'll be prepared to know what to look for and understand it at a high level. Thank you.
The Environmental Protection Agency, Lee Zeldin. Mr. Trump has referred to him as the administration's secret weapon. In fact, Zeldin is an Army veteran with a background in law and crisis management, actually. But let's just back up. Whoever the president picks will undoubtedly.
All right. My good Lori says, I feel like her conscience was getting to her. Thank you so much, Lori.
Undoubtedly be someone who will aggressively pursue prosecutions against his biggest rivals and also navigate the complicated legal issues hanging over the White House right now. Not surprisingly, Republicans, including some I've spoken to, are hoping to move quickly to confirm whomever President Trump nominates for this post. Lauren Craig.
All right, Kristen, welcome. Kristen, thank you. We know you'll have the very latest this Sunday on that and much more, because if it is Sunday, it's...
Okay, so what do you guys think so far? We're going to keep moving and covering even more when it comes to Pam Bondi. We're going to see what the former judge had to say in regards to this. So let's keep moving here.
Andrew Napolitano. Good morning to you, Judge. Great to see you. So the president reportedly frustrated with Bondi for not moving quick enough on several indictments against some of his political adversaries. Bondi also under fire for the handling of the Epstein files. What do you think the final straw was for him?
Well, I think the final. Good morning, Mark and Charlotte. Always a pleasure, whether we're in the same room or remote. I think the final straw was the president's frustration at the slow pace of the prosecution of his political adversaries. We know about the failure to indict successfully Jim Comey. We know about the failure to indict successfully New York State Attorney General Letitia James. What we don't know about are others that the president had asked Attorney General Bondi to seek to indict, and which apparently hasn't happened yet. Look, on one side of this equation is the Constitution, which says effectively the president is the head of the executive branch, and everybody in the executive.
Well, so I just want to let you guys know, I covered the No Kings the other weekend here in New York. And so I was right there. You guys probably saw it. I was right there with Letitia James, and I had my Watching the World sign, and she said she would follow Watching the World. So if Letitia James is following, shout out to you, and thank you so much for following Watching the World too as well. So thank you.
Executive branch works for the president pursuant to his policies.
Right.
On the other side of this is the law, which has been enacted by Congress and even by some states, which says there are things lawyers must do, like they can't charge people for felonies without getting a grand jury to indict, and things lawyers may not do, And so that tension, I think, probably was a little too much for the president to endure.
And we know that Pam Bondi has been subpoenaed to testify.
So I just want to take a moment because Mr. Chester Cheetah makes a good point. Says, me personally, if I was Pam Bondi, I would throw Donald Trump under the effing bus, even if that meant getting him impeached. And remember, I voted for him, but I don't agree with his firing of her. So let me ask you guys a question. Do you guys think that Pam Bondi will become the next Marjorie Taylor Greene? Put a 1 in the chat if you think Pam Bondi will be on the trail talking negatively about the president in the upcoming months and years ahead, or do you think she's going to toe the line and still stay loyal to the president even though he fired her? So give us a 1 or a 2. A 1 if you think she's going to stay truly devoted. Remember the song by Earth, Wind, and Fire, True Devotion, right? Blessed are the children. Let's see what you guys have to say.
For the House oversight on April 14th, and that's related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. Not sure yet if they will enforce that subpoena. We know that on X, Congresswoman Nancy Mace has said that her subpoena will still stand. So how much do you think Bondi's new job status, whatever that might be, will affect her deposition?
Well, I think she's going to testify. Look, we don't know if she's still the attorney general. We haven't seen a letter of resignation. We don't know.
Well, Jeff says that Marjorie Taylor Greene was ruthless and conning, nothing like Bondi. Okay, thank you.
Todd Blanche is yet the acting attorney general, but whether she's in office or not on April 14th, because of Congresswoman Mace and 1 or 2 other...
Guys, Underball says Pam Bondi will be prosecuted for aiding the cover-up of the Epstein files. My heavens.
Republicans joining all the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. I think she will be compelled to testify under oath, Charla, but she's going to be testifying about history, not about things that can happen, because we know that she's either out of office or soon will be.
Oh my goodness, Lisa almost took me out of my chair. She says she has Trump devotion syndrome. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. Deborah says they can be buddies, bosom buddies. All right.
Yeah, good point.
So now that a lot of speculation, Judge, goes to who's next. And Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche now serving as acting Attorney General. There are some reports that maybe...
You know, guys, Motley is making a very important point, and thank you again, Motley. Nice to have you. Molly says her security will be at risk. Didn't they just move Pam Bondi because of the security risks? I just thought about that. Thank you, Molly. They just moved her because of Iran was basically coming after her head, I believe. And now she's fired. What does that mean, right? Will she have the luxury? I mean, some of them were over in Washington on the Army base. Remember, they saw the drones and they have all this protection. I wonder, will she maintain such protection?
PA Administrator Lee Zeldin might get the nod. There are some others who are being mentioned. If it's Todd Blanche, be careful what you ask for. This guy's a former prosecutor, defense attorney, and he is really well tested under the court of law.
You know, since the World War II era, Mark, the Attorney General of the United States, with just 1 or 2 exceptions, has been a very, very highly respected lawyer as a legal technician. With deference to Pam Bondi, I don't think she was in that category. Todd Blanche is. Todd is a highly respected former prosecutor and criminal defense lawyer. The baggage that he has is that he's the president's former personal lawyer, and that may rub some members of the Senate the wrong way. But I think Todd, knowing him briefly, I don't know him well, has the fortitude to say, Mr. President, we can't do this. There's no evidence here. You want us to indict Mark Lotter? He didn't do anything wrong.
Guys, could you put a globe in the chat? Thank you. If you could do that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, buckle up. Grab the popcorn. This ought to be some interesting next few months here. All right. Thanks, Judge.
All right. Very good. We're going to keep moving and check out just a few more facets of this story with Pam Bondi. So let's see what's happening here in regards to her losing her position.
Law school alumni have called on their alma mater to revoke awards given to former Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Oh, they're pulling her card. Isn't that something? They're revoking her Rewards. What is that about?
Tuesday. New tonight, 10 Tampa Bay News reporter Annie Krall joins us live from Pinellas County after speaking with one of the attorneys leading this call to action. Annie?
Miranda, President Donald Trump announced her departure on Thursday and praised her loyalty. But according to CBS News, the president was dissatisfied with
Okay, Simmons says Todd will fall in line like the rest of the Trump fanatics.
her handling of the Epstein files, along with not prosecuting some of his political rivals. Now, the alumni group here at Stetson is asking the school to make some changes, especially considering they think that her actions as Attorney General reflect poorly on Stetson. Here's what they want from the school. Number one, revoke Bondi's honorary doctorate of laws degree. Number two, revoke her Ben Willard Award. It's an honor.
They want to revoke her doctorate. Isn't that something? Do you guys think it's fair for them to do this to Pam Bondi? Shout out to Mashona. Welcome in. Good to see you. Should they do this to her? What do you think, Deborah? Tell me what you think. Lisa Anderson, thank you for gifting another membership. You're far too kind. Thank you so much. Nice to have you here. I think we connected on the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case, but I could be wrong. If I am, hold it to my heart, not. But thank you so much. But let's keep moving.
That recognizes public service. And finally, remove her Distinguished Alumni Award. Now, I just spoke with the attorney representing the Stetson Alumni Coalition, Johnny Bardeen, who says they're hoping to restore confidence and value.
Not only that, they're trying to disbar her. Isn't this something? She's taken all this heat for being so loyal to our commander-in-chief, the President of the United States.
In a Stetson law degree.
You know, Stetson law in the public is not known as prominently. You know, I think in the legal community it is. We are.
Okay, guys, let's pay attention to Kathy. Kathy, number one, thank you for being here. Thanks for liking and subscribing to the channel. Kathy says, colleges believe in integrity. I'm in a National Honor Society, and if I caught doing a crime, I lose that lifetime spot. Wow, thank you for giving us more insight into the situation, Kathy. It's nice to have you here.
Top of trial advocacy, legal writing, and ethics year after year after year, but not everyone knows that.
My goodness. Hammer Man says she belongs in jail. Lock her up. Wow.
And attorneys already face a public perception problem. And so when one of our most prominent alumni ascends to that position, we ought to be brimming with pride.
All right, Jeff. Good old Jeff says, is anyone really surprised by this with Trump? Thank you very much, Jeff. Hope your family's well. Grumpy says they don't know Lance. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to look at our last point of today before we reassemble tonight to see what's going to be the developments. We're going to be on deck at 8 p.m. Hopefully we have a deal on the table by then, but if not, well, we're going to cover it either way. But it looks like it could be some sad situations developing if Iran does not come to the table tonight with the President of the United States. Whether they like him or not, we need a deal to happen to save lives.
A major shakeup at the Department of Justice. President Trump has fired Attorney General Pamela Jo Bondi after just a 14-month tenure leading the DOJ. Bondi is now the second member of Trump's cabinet to be forced out in this second term. Bondi reportedly ended up in the president's crosshairs for a couple of reasons, principally her handling of the DOJ's Epstein files. We'll have more on that later. Also an issue was her failure.
Okay, guys, so we have Lance. Lance says he's answering to what I said. It's going to be sad tonight at 8 o'clock if Iran does not make a deal. He says sad for you, sad for who? Who do you guys think is going to be sad for? Will anybody be sad if the President of the United States decides to move forward and really escalate this whole war on Iran, especially if it gets to a point where there's nuclear behavior involved? So answer that question, guys, for Lance. Let him know who's going to be sad.
To successfully prosecute the president's political foes. Let's take a look at how some of that played out.
Trump putting it.
Thank you, Lisa, for the super chat. That's awfully kind of you. Thank you very much for all the support. That's right, Lance. Sad for the Iranian military. Thank you.
Extraordinary pressure on his Attorney General Pam Bondi, publicly calling on her to use the power of the Justice Department to prosecute his political enemies.
Notable cases include 2 failed attempts to indict New York Attorney.
So we're still covering Pam Bondi. We're wrapping it up, though. But fourth, Density Music says his choice will protect our future and the future of our children. Thank you.
General Letitia James.
Today's ruling means, at least for now, both cases will be dismissed.
Federal charges have been dropped against Mayor Ras Baraka following his arrest outside an ICE facility.
Bondi is the one who installed Lindsay Halligan as the interim U.S. attorney. That has been invalidated.
Both Halligan and Bondi should be disbarred.
Those are just some of the many cases that the DOJ has tried without success.
Look at all these cases, right, that they've tried. No charges for Letitia James, Jerome Powell, right? Look at there. Quite a few people. Mark Kelly. I don't even see James Comey on the list. But they got old Don Lemon. They have John Bolton. Definitely he's on the cooking block. You also have Fannie Willis. I imagine that she's going to be on the front row as Todd Blanche takes over. Oh, here's James Comey. But I believe that she's going to be in the hot seat because her case was very instrumental down in Georgia against the president. And I think he really wants to see some of these people cooked.
Us to pursue. Here are some more. Judges have pushed back in each case, saying that the challenges themselves lack legal merit. And with any government shakeup, it seems.
So, guys, we're just wrapping up here. I'm going to finish out with this video, but I want, before we get to the conclusion, I want to be very clear because tonight at 8 o'clock is a big event. It could be very life-altering if this thing gets out of control. I think the president is using the art of war, just like he's trying to present with the art of the deal. Hopefully it works out and things do not get even more chaotic. But put a 1 in the chat if you agree with the action that's happening from the president and this administration in Iran. So if you agree with it, put a 1 in the chat. Put a 2 if you disagree, okay? And then this is important. Put a 3 in the chat if you just don't care. You don't follow the war. You could care less. Maybe you like to go to Disney World. I don't know. Maybe you want to go fishing or something. But put a 1 if you agree with the president. You're going to ride with the president, 100% standing on business with the president of the United States. Put a 2 if you don't want any parts of it. You're just like the Pope. You don't want to do war. You're a Christian, right? You believe that we need to lead with love and just let them come in and do it, whatever. So 1, 2, and 3. Let's see what everybody has to say in regards to this. Very important poll. Thank you.
That breaking up is hard to do. Bondi reportedly did not want to leave her post at DOJ. The New York Times reports that she spent much of yesterday making her case to stay in the cabinet.
My heavens, this is scary. We have very few 1s in comparison to the 2s. A lot of people are, wow, Hammer says it's an illegal war, folks. We've been hanging out for quite some time. We're going on 2 hours, folks. Usually I'm on for an hour and out. I've been enjoying hanging out with you guys. And tonight we're going to be hanging out for a long time until we figure out what's happening with the war.
He, however, released a statement saying otherwise. She wrote, quote, that she is thrilled.
Okay, so notice, this is the key part of the show today, guys. Notice how Pam Bondi writes her answer, her response to what the president decided to give her that big, you're fired at the highest level in government. Check out what she says.
To be moving to the private sector and will continue fighting for President Trump.
So a lot of people will be very upset, maybe even feeling disgraced because they are getting fired at this high level. But look at her approach, right? And she's still willing to continue fighting for the president and this administration, right? Something to think about. And thank you guys for all the comments. I'm going to get to some of those in a few minutes.
Trump announced the shakeup in a Truth Social post, writing that Deputy AG Todd Blanche will serve as acting Attorney General until a new AG is nominated.
Do you guys think it's right? And I'm not trying to go too far with this. Do you think it's right for a president to be able to bring his personal attorney, bring him into the White House to represent his affairs, basically, but in the Department of Justice leading the way? Do you think that there should be a barrier there? What do you guys think? I really want to get through the comments. Let's get to it. I'm going to push these answers out right now. Grumpy says, hey, we don't attack Mel. Don't care how much you disagree. All right, it's okay. I guess I get attacked every day. I'm used to it. But thank you, Grumpy. I know you have my back. I appreciate that. JH says, why do we hear what Tom Hankins is doing? Who cares? Okay. Brian says, you need to make the world safer sooner or later. This has to happen. If Biden was alert enough to do this, the Dems would have, praised him. Hypocrites, 100%. Good point, Brain. Thank you very much. Good point. Okay. Vaughn says she was an AG, not his personal attorney. We're not talking about Pam Bondi. We're talking about Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche. I broke it down earlier in the show. Todd Blanche. I covered Donald Trump's case here in New York City, where he received 34 felonies. Todd Blanche, who replaced Pam Bondi, was Donald Trump's personal attorney, right? When the president won the election and became the president of the United States for the second term, Todd Blanche came to be the chief of the Department of Justice, right? And so now he's taking the place of Pam Bondi, at least for the foreseeable future. So that's what we're talking about. But thank you for your comment. I understand some people are just coming in. I just want to make it clear. Anderson says, seems there should be some type of barrier. Okay, it's just like when it comes to these senators, right? Congressmen, the president of the United States says that, like, for instance, Omar probably had 30,000 to her name, according to the president, when she came into office, and now these people are like worth 30 million. So he says there should be some sort of barrier for insider trading or bribery. So it seems like there should be a barrier here too. I just want to see what you guys have to say. John Stevenson says private sector pays more money. All right, good point. Good point. She'll make some money. Maybe that'll take away the embarrassment. Anderson says, who's attacking my mail? Thank you, Anderson. Go get him, but go easy on him. I want everybody coming back. All right, Pretty Thing says, that is wrong. Okay. Curtis says, the administration is corrupt and needs to be removed. Oh, throw the whole thing out. Thank you very much, Curtis. Thanks for subscribing to the channel, for liking. All right, Be a Happy Camper says he had rogue judges. The Get Trump judge gave money to Biden campaign and his daughter made millions off the case. All charges were dropped. Thank you. JH says Trump has never drank alcohol in his life. Okay, very good. Victor says Trump should be in jail for a war crime. Oh my. Oh my. Simmons, good to see you commenting so much, says his entire administration is there to cover Trump. Blanche is no different. Okay, he's going to be covering the way, every little angle, every little drop, right? Let's see. Anderson says that's to Lisa. Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay. JH says no kings is so stupid. Okay. AI says conflict of interest. Okay, good point. All right. Gary says Trump and Pam made a deal. Okay, make it look like they fired you. Okay, thank you guys so much. There's so many comments coming in. I really do appreciate all the support. I'll try to get through a few more before we get out of here and skedaddle. Thank you very much. Lisa says, I was too busy ranting yesterday. Okay, Hammerman says, benefits Israel. A lot of people are starting to realize how much the United States really supports Israel. That's why we're starting to hear a lot of these discussions about Israel. But believe you me, Israel has quite the campaign strategy for pushing back, right? They're definitely pushing back in every way to change the narrative. Kathy says the whole administration, both sides. Be a happy camper says every president said that they were going to go into Iran. Stop watching the news. Okay. All right. John says, so Todd Blanche can retain attorney-client privileges. Woo, John, you're swinging at the highest level. You're major league with that answer. Thank you very much, John. You're far too brilliant with that. Lori says, we all got your back, Mel. Thank you so much, Lori. I do believe that definitely coming from you. Lisa says, multitasking, not my strong point, but you do a great job. Be kind to yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself, Lisa. I have your back. Mike says, not if she gets disbarred. That's right. That's on the table. They're going to cook her. They might cook her slow, folks. They're not playing around. This administration is not taking any prisoners. Grumpy says, what war crimes? Okay. Grumpy wants to know, he wants to answer right now. What war crimes are you talking about? Lisa says, too many important current events. Okay. Kathy, I look forward to your comment. Kathy says, that's why they're all ineffective yes men, and they give him a skewed 2-minute video of war each day. He thinks we're doing better than we are, deceiving himself with false reasoning because of the information, perhaps. That's a great way of breaking it down, Kathy. So scholarly. I can tell you have that heavy thinking ability. Thank you so much. Be a Happy Camper says Autopin administration lost over 300,000 children that are being trafficked. Google it. Okay, that's true. I stand with you on that. Okay, Lisa says head spinning for real. Jeff says peace out, y'all. Okay, thank you, Jeff. We'll see you tonight. Okay, we'll take a few more. Grumpy says presidents are bound by international law and Congress hasn't brought up any issues of war crimes against the president, so there is no wars. Okay, no wars, no wars. Thank you, Grumpy. You're always hitting it right on the spot. Thank you very much. All right. Hammer says war, NATO don't help because Americans are not in danger. Okay. Yes, NATO activates for defense, not necessarily offense. Jeff says, thank you, Mel, for a great chat. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We'll end with Simmons. Simmons says, good point, John. All right, guys. So we've had quite the show today. We're over 2 hours. We typically don't go that long, but I had to play catch up because I was away for quite some time last week. So I feel like we're back on track now. I just need 1 minute, folks. Okay, so I've been diligent here, sitting here, talking with you guys for the last 2 hours. I don't know if there's a deal on the table yet, okay? So I have to do some research because I don't like to report things. And sometimes I present so much information that people say, oh my God, you believe in this war or you don't believe in the war. It's very hard because I'm just presenting information. It depends on what time you come in within the hour. And if you only looked at that little part of what I said, you could come to a false conclusion. All right. So it's very important for us to get the big picture. We have to hear the whole story. And that's the issue that we have in life nowadays because everybody takes, number one, it's my personal opinion, which I try not to give. But I think when it comes to TikTok and all of this swiping business, it has trained many people to only want to spend maybe seconds trying to understand a thing. We just want to keep swiping. We don't want to take the time to listen to something for an hour or to read an entire book. You see it with the younger generation. They just want to go on their iPad and swipe, 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 swipe. And when you say, hey, let's watch a 2-hour movie, people are like, oh my God, 2 hours? I would never sit for a 2-hour movie, right? So this is what the world has come to. And I think at a higher level, you have people like China. They were really pushing this, and I think it was quite successful. It's almost like the auto war, because in our lifetimes, we haven't seen China dropping explosives like we've seen from America and other countries such as Russia. China is more subtle in their approach. Okay, so they'll have us sitting there swiping, affecting your brain cells. So nowadays you don't want to spend time doing the deep dives, right? They purchase, take some time tonight. We could do a deep dive, but take some time and just research all of the land in the United States that China has purchased. They have a different art of war. And now I'm not saying that this is a part of war, but in your average neighborhood, sometimes you have 2 Chinese restaurants. You might have other restaurants in the area, but I guarantee you, when you go and stay at a hotel now and you go to the Google, to your Bing, and you do some research, you want to get some food, you're going to see, and I'm not trying to discriminate or anything like that, but you're going to have so many Chinese restaurants come up, right? This has to be by design, to say the least. So China is very smart. They're playing a different type of strategy that by the time you figure out what's happening, you might be out of here, right? It's very true. In fact, when it comes to Iran, we're starting to see that China is quietly sending them information. China is quietly sending them aid so that they can win, right? And I told you guys when I sat in court with Maduro, Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, China was boots on the ground. They have deals with all of the enemies of the Americas, but yet we still shake hands with them. This is just common sense at this point. But most people don't realize that they play a high level type of war. In fact, when you go back to Great Britain, right, we discussed this a little bit earlier. They were the world power until they got caught up in fighting all of these wars. So it's almost like, they weighed down by so many wars while America was building itself as the new world power. So if we're not careful, we could fall into the same trap as Britain. Or recently I went to Rome. Rome was a magnificent, right, world power. They had all this strength, and guess what happened to them? They got bombarded with all of these same war actions. So we really need a strong leader, and many have found that strong leader to be the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, whereas we have on the other side a great measure of people that feel like he needs to get out of here, and they don't like the president at all. But at any rate, no matter how we slice this thing, as I said yesterday, whichever side you sit on, it's the 2 wings on the same bird. And the bird ends up going to the same place. And a lot of times we get so distracted because we're saying, oh, my side is better. No, their side is better. But I think when you actually sit people down to the table, when I sit down with Stella, when I sit down with Gold Digger, when I sit down with Uncommon Woman, when I sit down with Anderson, when I sit down with Jeff, when I sit down with Grumpy, I guarantee your beliefs, when you separate what you truly believe, it's not going to be just red. It's not going to be just blue. It's probably going to be somewhere down the middle with intelligence and what's right. I think that would be the ultimate goal for each person. But it's cool to be a part of a team. It's cool to be a part of a group because it's just like down in where I grew up in the South, they had this big prison. And when I was a child, I would often hear about the death penalty. And they were actually, back in those days, I'm probably giving my age up, but they were actually giving people the electric chair. And one thing that I heard as a child that stuck with me is that when they go to pull the lever on a man that they have condemned to death, they always have 3 guys there. And they do it as a group. They take the man's life as a group, so one person is not carrying that heavy load bombarded because they feel like it's personal that they took the man's life. So a lot of times we do things in groups that we wouldn't do by ourselves because it's easy to spread the guilt out and says, well, it wasn't me that actually went in and robbed the bank. It was about 3 or 4 of us that went in. We kind of see something similar with Don Lemon when he went into this church, right? And I'm not here to say he was right or wrong. He has a case, and I'm going to be covering that case, but it's up to the courts to make the final decision. But even in that particular case, when you go in as a group, it muddies the waters. It's hard to pinpoint who actually threw the rock, who caused the glass to shatter, right? Because you have a group. So that's what we do. Is actually sort of a cowardly move to just go around doing things because the crowd did it. It says a lot about us as individuals because I know people that go and they're going to take on the situation head first. If you come with me and if you can profit from it, then both of us are fine. But you have some people willing to stand on business for themselves. And so I say all of that to say, we need to try to find more intelligence, try to find more truth. If the war kicks off today at 8 p.m., let's say you're a Republican and you feel like, listen, I'm with the war. That's my president. I love him dearly, right? Then so be it. That's great. But if you're a Democrat and you might say, oh, no, I hate this war. This is not the Democratic thing to do. But ultimately, right, we should look at this and say, look, this is forget the blue and the red, right? These are the pros and cons. We do have a real problem with Iran. Somebody needs to address it. What's the best way forward? I don't agree with the president. Why are we over there fighting a war when it's actually Europe that's in their backyard? They have the threat more abundantly than we do. So let them solve their own problem over there. But then you say the United States is so concerned about Israel, and that's the reason why we want to protect Israel. And it's not like these other nations don't see that. And if you're off on your rocker, then come off it. You have to look at the facts for what it is. It's quite clear because here on this channel, Watching the World, we cover pretty much everything the president does. When these leaders of other countries come on to the White House, we typically broadcast. There's no secret that weekend when Netanyahu went down to Mar-a-Lago, I actually presented it here with you guys. I could pretty much tell you some of the regular people that sat with me, we watched it. Right after that, we saw where Witkoff and also Jared Kushner, we saw they had a meeting with Iran. We saw the next day they started dropping explosives. So when you hear the facts and you remember the timeline, it starts to make sense to you is what I'm saying. So forget all these colors. We need to look at life for what it is. And not only that, we need to teach our next generations how to think for themselves and not be so caught up in this group think, because I've never seen many people profit from just being a part of some group. Usually, when you're part of this big group, it's oftentimes the group that drop you on your head. And we see that with religion. We see it with government. We've seen it with Fox News, with Tucker Carlson. He's dropped on his head. So now what he's doing, he's talking about the system, telling you, listen, that these are the holes in it. We see this time and time again. So in peace, I try to tell everybody, let's try to be different and think for ourselves. And wherever that takes you, I hope it takes you to a great place. But ultimately, I hope you find freedom, because that's what I found, and I'm enjoying it. Thank you. I'll see you guys tonight around 8 o'clock.
Different voices, but the same song. Living in a world where we all belong. nothing remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. The colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.